Greetings, everyone. Well, I figure it's just been too long since I discussed Koa trees. Up here behind me, you'll see some Koa trees that were planted back in 2005. This little guy right here next to me, this is a sucker from a Koa tree. The Koa will produce runners that come up off the roots. Any place where the root might have been nicked or something by being stepped on or whatever, it'll produce these. Now I have trees here that have died, okay, but the roots have gone ahead, popped up suckers. Type you see here is the Highland Koa. These trees actually grow better from about 2,000 up to about 6,000 feet. I'm here at 1,680, and so the trees don't do that well here. I lose quite a few of them. This is one of the better looking trees I have. It's up against boundary here where there's a bunch of other trees that had been growing for many years. I think the mycorrhizae in the soil is probably one of the reasons that tree looks so good over there. So, why the fascination with Koa? Now, the tree's proper name is Acacia Koa. It is a member of the acacia family. It was probably a long time ago a black acacia seed that drifted from Australia and landed here. But then it evolved separately into the tree we call Koa today. Now, this tree has tremendous spiritual and practical and artistic significance here in Hawaii and to the Hawaiian culture. The name Koa refers to the strength of a warrior in Hawaiian. The tree, generally speaking, grows on the slopes of the volcanoes, somewhat elevated, and traditional belief is that the fire in the grain, the chalcedony in the grain of the Koa tree is related to Pele and the fire in the volcanoes. That the Koa tree growing on the volcanoes has the fire of the volcano or of Pele in its grain. Well, I can tell you for sure, I haven't hardly run across too many trees on this earth that have the same sort of almost holographic type of a grain pattern. When you take well-polished, excellent figured piece of Koa and kind of turn it in the light, it's as if you can look in and through the grain. The grain becomes three-dimensional. It's somewhat iridescent in that sense. The term in mineralogy, I believe, is chalcedony. I think that's the right one. Like a tiger's eye gem. Like a tiger's eye gem. It has that quality. Right, Gracie? Gracie said, oh, Bill's shooting videos. I better get over here, right? Yeah, there she is. You can't see her. She's right down there. Yeah, so it's a very significant tree. It was the large logs were used to make the traditional Hawaiian canoes. Yes, this was the canoe tree. It is what most of the ukuleles and guitars here are made of. A ukulele made from Koa or a guitar made from Koa is a prized item and incredibly beautiful. So this furniture made from these trees is totally high-end. Next time you're in the national park here at Volcanoes, stop in at the art gallery and have a look at some of those Koa objects they have in there. You may find yourself falling in love with the tree, as I have. I am deeply attached to it. I admit that I think that it came to me through guitars. That's how I first ran in contact with Koa wood. But it's a beautiful, beautiful tree. It is on a good grade of the wood. Excellent grade of the wood, one of the most expensive hardwoods in North America. Yeah, it's the most valuable tree that we actually have in the United States, excuse me. Yes. Yeah, it's been a while since I looked at pricing, but excellent grades of Koa, well figured with good color. easily, $250 to $300 a board foot. With COVID and the price of building materials, I didn't want to think about it. Although I noticed that the local flooring store over here is still advertising Koa flooring at $1.99 a square foot. So, well, they haven't raised the price of Koa flooring, supposedly. Yeah, so the tree is extraordinarily valuable in that regard. It's also extraordinarily beautiful. And today we are losing one of the other major trees here in Hawaii, the ohia. Our ohia trees are dying due to two funguses and an ambrosia beetle. And probably human traffic spreading the funguses and pigs spreading the funguses and so on. The ohia was the major hardwood tree of this island. They are dying. Koa has not done well on this island ever since the introduction of exotic plants and exotic diseases that got in, mostly water molds, things like Fusarium or Phytophthora. They got into the soils and they thrive in the warmer soils on the lower elevations. And so where Koa at one time used to grow to a rather low elevation, maybe with 50-foot elevation to the seashore here, it doesn't anymore. Conditions are unsuitable. And here at 1,680 feet at our place, we probably lose about half of the trees that we plant, the Koa trees. Now the other half grow. And so I keep planting, but they are susceptible at lower elevation. If you're below 2,000 feet, you can probably expect to watch a die-off when you're planting Koa. The trees are probably happiest at about 4,000 to 6,000 feet, somewhere in that vicinity. They seem to grow quite well up there in the cooler soils right around the volcano Kilauea and up the slopes of Mauna Loa. They're on places on Mauna Kea too, on Parker Ranch. Many years ago, I brought Koa seeds into California and started growing them in the Bay Area, around San Francisco Bay, Fremont in particular. And I found they did pretty well there. But when I harvested the seed, I harvested with the thought in mind that I'll have to go to high elevation sources because it freezes in the Bay Area. You get frost at least. And I will probably want to go to the drier side, the leeward side of everything, harvesting Koa from where there was less rainfall, because California has drought for 6 months out of the year. Well, what I found was that some of my problems were actually reversed of what I visualized. Like I said, I was concerned about frost. Well, it turns out, other than maybe the 89-90 freeze, which was a 100-year episode in the Bay, and I wasn't growing Koa there at the time, so I can't say, but that would have been challenging for the trees. Yeah, I lost Mexican limes and cherimoyas and quite a few things during that period. So the Koas may have taken a hit. I don't know for sure, but that was really a freeze. I mean, it was cold, if anybody was around at that time. Since that period, I've never seen any weather in the Bay Area that got cold enough to damage a Koa tree. What I did witness was that the heat of summer was a problem. Koa trees don't really care for temperatures up above 85, 89 degrees very much. If you start to enter the 90s, which we typically will in California during the summertime, the trees will go dormant. Now, in Hawaii, they don't go dormant in most locations. That's one reason Koa doesn't really have annual rings, like a maple tree or an oak or something. Yes, it's different looking to the grain because of the fact that it never actually does stop growing for the winter, so it doesn't make a ring. In the Bay Area, it would probably stop and make a ring in the summer due to the heat. The trees will shut down. Well, the first time I saw that happening, I said, oh no, drought stress. So I started irrigating my trees, and I almost killed them. because if they go dormant for any reason, and you start applying water to them, it makes the trees susceptible to water molds. So in general, in California, the soils are typically dry enough that we don't get too much trouble with the water molds there on the Koa. But if you irrigate when they're dormant, look out, people. I warned a friend of mine about that, and he just killed his tree. He wouldn't believe me. Sad. I almost killed some trees. I stopped when I realized what was happening, and they did recover. The trees can recover from a water mold attack if it isn't too bad. So anyway, there was the issue. I thought I needed frost-resistant trees. Instead, I needed heat-resistant trees. But now there's a lot of, well, I don't know what to call it. You get on the internet, and there is so much stuff. If you're looking for information on how to grow Koa and about the trees, if you don't come here looking for it, I highly recommend, there's a book, you can get it on Amazon, it's called Growing Hawaiian Koa. It's the Bible on the subject. It'll tell you all about it, and the information is very accurate, well researched. There's also University of Hawaii, in their agroforestry stuff, there are sections, large sections on Koa, and so you can find a lot of information through the university system that's online. You don't even have to buy it. This information is quite accurate, well researched, documented, and fairly scientific. Otherwise, there's a lot of other stuff out there that's just I've heard the variations in the Koa referred to as different species. Well, no, the variations in Koa are not different species. The variations in Koa are just simple genetic and environmental adaptations, and they are completely and totally unpredictable. Go talk to any expert in the subject. If you take seed from a tree that had a very curly grain with a chocolate brown wood, it's not unusual that it's going to produce a tree that has a red colored wood with a perfectly straight grain. There is no way to control what these trees will do. Now, I've seen a couple of genetic adaptations that might have been transferable. I don't know. I did have one seed at a time that produced a columnar tree, like an Italian cypress, that had sickle-shaped leaves. Now, they came out of seed from normal-looking Koas. I never got a chance to propagate from the tree. The tree only started to seed the time we sold the house, and then the people who bought the house cut the tree down and killed it and had it hauled off for compost because they had no idea what they just done. It usually happens with urban Koa in the Bay Area. There are a lot of urban myths and horror stories about people who planted Koa, and when they die and the neighbors or the relatives inherit the property, the first thing they do is cut down that ugly acacia in the front yard. And it's later they find out from some expert, do you realize what you just did? That happens. It happened to me. Well, happened after me. I was gone. I don't care. I got my trees here, but I haven't seen another one of those trees like that one. No, that's the only one like that I've seen. Right, Gracie? Yep, Gracie, come charging out here. Huh? There's my kitty, huh? Are you my good girl? Yeah. You're such a great cat. Yep, she's been around out here all morning hanging out, so I figured I better give her a spot in the camera, right, Gracie? Huh? You want to be part of the show? Yeah, so how Koa genetics react, a lot of it has to do with environmental conditions too. Take same seed, plant it in different conditions, you're probably going to get different looking trees out of it. So anybody who's interested in getting Koa seed from me, there is no way I can predict what sort of a Koa tree you're going to get from that seed. And those are not different species of koa. They are all one. There is one. Now we do have the koa ia, which is the lowland koa, or Acacia koa ia. Now, it is a related tree. It does have its own species. It probably split off from the original tree at some point, although I don't know how much they know about that. It is fairly different, really. The wood's similar. It tends to be darker. The trees tend to be smaller, scrubbier looking, shorter, bushier, not as columnar. They have smaller looking leaves than the true koa. They also do not produce the bipinnate compound in the young trees. That's always a mystery to new guys growing koa. They come out, they pop out with fern-looking leaves. They're called bipinnate compounds. But then as the trees age, that fern-looking leaf disappears, and only the central rib of the fern remains and enlarges and becomes what's called an enlarged phylloid. And so you end up starting life with koa trees looking like locust or fern-like leaves, and later in life they end up looking more like eucalyptus trees because of these enlarged phylloids. And if you chop a limb off of an old tree, chances are when it starts to grow, it's going to go back to ferny-looking leaves again. Yeah. Well, I got some beautiful koa seedlings here. This right here is the common koa. Yeah, another thought I have on this too is it's not the first time that I've had people ask me when I sold koa seed from the website if this seed was taken from old giant trees. And my answer will always be no. I'm 72 years old. I am not going to climb 100 feet in the air to grab a seed pod off of a 100-foot high tree. Okay, that ain't going to happen. I intend to live for a few more years and don't want to fall from the top of an old koa tree. Plus, those are hard to find trees anyway. News to folks who are worried about that issue is generally in any given koa forest on this island, where you find old matriarch trees, you will also find around those matriarchs much smaller trees and medium-sized trees. Those trees ordinarily emerged from the roots of the old mother tree due to damage, scarification from cows' hooves, for instance, very common. But anyway, the tree suckers. And when you find a 100-year-old tree, all the 20-year-old trees that are surrounding it and the 10-year-old trees are generally growing on the same root system. And so the genetics on the 15-foot high tree are identical in most cases to the genetics on the ancient tree. Also, even if they weren't suckers, the young trees around the old trees came from the old trees. Okay, so genetically they're as close as you're going to get. So don't ask me anymore when ordering koa seed if I got this from 100-year-old trees. I never do, and I'm not gonna either. Go find a teenager in college who wants to climb those trees. Okay. I note on some of the do's and don'ts with this tree. Now, I have videos online about how the seed is treated to get it to grow properly. It does require scarification, that is nicking of the seed, and hot water treatment. I use 140-degree water. Just put it in the water at that temperature, and then just let it cool down and soak overnight. But the university says 180-degree water. I'm a chicken. I have not gone that hot. My solar collectors run out at about 140 degrees, so that's what I use. It seems to work just fine. Generally speaking, I get around 80 or maybe even 80 plus 85% germination percentage out of koa seed. If you don't scarify and hot water treat, they will still come up eventually, but you might be waiting a year or more for germination. So definitely you'll get 2-3 weeks if you treat the seed. So there's a do or a do not. Another one also is that the trees do not like being planted anywhere where their roots could be damaged. So don't plant them on cow pastures. Don't plant them where there's a heavy pig traffic. Do not plant them along footpaths, or along driveways and roadsides. The damage will cause the trees to sucker. It'll damage the roots, and maybe it'll cause a rot too. It's also advisable, don't plant them along property lines. This was a mistake of mine. I planted them along property lines. I have a neighbor that uses Roundup, and Roundup is lethal to these trees. Plus, because the trees sucker, they can be 100 feet away from the darn tree and kill it by spraying a sucker. Yeah. So don't use Roundup, and don't plant them near a property line where you got a neighbor that might be using the stuff. They don't take it. There's green in the bark. There's chlorophyll in Koa bark on the youngish trees, and any plant that has chlorophyll in the bark is susceptible to the herbicide windrift. They also seem to be picky about being planted near other plants that produce allelopathic compounds. You have like eucalyptus or strawberry guava. These plants produce chemicals around them that repel the growth or stunt the growth of other vegetation that might try to come up near the trees. In the case of Koa, strawberry guava for sure is just about lethal. It's almost herbicide. Do not try planting Koa into strawberry guava. They also have a problem with the bacterial associations that exist in sod grass, and they don't compete well with sod grass. I lost quite a few of mine while I was in California that had been planted in sod grass. They just get buried in the stuff and lost. The culture in the sod grass is not right either, and so if they're planted near existing forest, there's probably fungal associations in the soil that will support the trees. When they're planted in sod, it's tough. They have their own rhizobia. That is a bacteria that lives on the roots that fixes nitrogen. But it's a specific type, and about the only way you can get your hands on it is take roots from Koa live that had the rhizobia nodules on it, put them in a blender with water, juice it, and then spray it or pour it on the ground or in the soil around the trees. It is not available commercially in any kind of a package, and so you have to use actually live roots if you intend to inoculate. Too much trouble for me. I would probably get better results here if I could, and did, because like I say, I lose about half of my trees. So far, though, I have not lost a single lowland Koa at this elevation, so we're hoping that one's going to do a little better. Well, with the loss of the ohias, now we have a few other native trees around the island, but the vast majority of them tend to either grow really high up, like mamane, or really far west in the dry, like the willy willies, the Erythrhinus sandwichensis, our coral tree, which is at risk too. Okay, a lot of trees at risk here. But now the Koa, it has its problems here and there around the island, but so far we do not have any kind of a plague coming through and wiping the Koa out wholesale. And so with the loss of the ohia, which is sort of a plague and is wiping them out wholesale, I suggest attempting to plant Koa, both lowland and highland, depending on your elevation. If you're at 2,000 feet and up, definitely try planting as much highland Koa as you can. If you're below that, I would experiment with the lowland Koa, and I have both here in the nursery. Another thing about growing them, they do not like being pot-bound, nor do they like having their roots disturbed. You will know if you were a bad man and you disturbed the roots because it smells like garlic. Yeah, you'll know immediately if you've crushed a koa root. It stinks. Yeah, they're pretty sensitive that way, and so I don't recommend growing koa out in anything larger than about a gallon pot, and that should be done very rapidly, the shifting. I usually start in 6 packs to get the seeds to germinate, going to 4-inch pots, going from there to gallon pots, and hopefully I'm out of the nursery or out into the field by the time I have to go any bigger than that. I have grown koa in California into 5-gallon pots for a couple of orders in the past, and that's also doable, but you'll figure you're probably going to be at about 6-foot high trees, pretty well rooted into a 5-gallon bucket in 11 or 12 months. That's how fast this moves along. And so if you're not going to 5-gallon pots, be ready within less than a year to get your trees out of the nursery and out into the field. Now, they don't like transplanting. It's not one of their favorite things to do. So no root disruption, no pot binding. Bigger trees are not better when it comes to koa. All they need to do is be big enough to tolerate the conditions you have put them in under. That's about it. So now, as far as koa seed is concerned, for those of you who are interested, Hawaii, actually, so most places in Hawaii are suitable habitat. There are other places. My experimentation with California says, yeah, California probably within 30 miles of the ocean, and at least from probably Santa Rosa or the Bay Area south, the trees will grow. They'll grow there. It's possible they grow in Florida. I don't know. I've sold quite a bit of seed to Florida. We'll find out how it works out. I really couldn't tell you. I have found that the trees were less prone to disease and grew faster in California than they do in their native habitat here in Hawaii, at least on my property here. I don't know why. I really don't. But that's been my observation. The trees really grow fast in the Bay Area. Well, there's a bit to say about the finest hardwood tree that we have here in Hawaii. Generally speaking, the word has been the tree only grows here, and whereas I guess I would like to promote that idea out of scarcity, so that it stays here, but it isn't really true. There are other places it will grow. And with the way trees become endangered and extinct, I believe that spreading the seed a bit is a good plan. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not one that tends to go for exclusive, all mine. No, and when it comes to horticulture, I've always found that sharing and spreading is better, because if you lose what you had, you can go back to where you spread it from to and get it back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's security. It's best insurance policy you have is spread something. The sales of seed this year have been intense, and I've also planted a lot of it in the nursery, and so I'm running out. It's October is the harvest month. I get it once a year in October. We're now in June, so it's getting close. I still do have seed, but I think I'm going to remove the 100 seed count from the website for a while and cut it back to 10 seed orders, just so we can get the seed spread around what I have left. It might last until the next harvest comes in. I'm not sure, but anyhow, there you go, folks. Aloha. Thanks for watching the channel. Grow more koa. Learn to love this tree. Right, Gracie? Grow more koas so Gracie can climb them. Mm-hmm. She's the rocket cat. She likes to climb trees.